All right, here we go. Al and Phil coming to you on an exciting day. This is the release of Jesus Politics today, which is pretty exciting for us. Dad, are you fired up about it?
Yeah, I got up this morning fired up. I've been on the self-quarantine for about 40 years. I'm visiting town in the middle of the week, Al, which is not my style, but here I am.
We are in the bowels of the Duck Commander Duck Call Assembly Room, which is normally we're right here in the space of one J Stone.
When did I start this thing? How many years ago, Al?
Well, you know,
35
a lot of people ask that, Dad. So basically, in 1972, that's the year you see everything. But really, 72 was just an idea, right? Because you're in a duck blind, you're blowing calls, and Big Al Boland, who I'm not named after, but it could be because I'm Big Al now, he said, Phil, you're not just calling those ducks, you're commanding those ducks. Remember that? Do you remember him saying that?
What I want the audience, you folks out there to understand is some people are good at being lawyers, some people are good at being accountants, some people are politicians, some people major in the sounds that birds make.
That's right.
I had in my brain pan, I would listen to these various species of ducks,
right,
and it's like playing music by ear. I would listen to them. Well, I just said I need to make a device that sounds like that particular bird. That pintail's got a little whistle about him, and that wood duck's got a little squeal about him, and I'm out there, and the little teal, so I got it in my head, and I'd work and I'd work.
Here,
and
now
I'd work.
I'm assuming I just took one right off the line.
This is a mallard hen.
Pretty good.
Just a little high pitched one there. Old Stone puts these together. He's the guy that started hunting with us. I recommended that he date my granddaughter,
which is my daughter,
Hal's daughter.
He's my son-in-law.
And I watched him for about 6 months during duck season, a couple of duck season. I said, let's see, you came from Afghanistan, you survived that, so you served your country. I said, you love Jesus, that's good. You're a pretty good duck caller. I said, you're a good shot. I said, son, I've vetted you and have officially today vetted you. The vetting process is over. I want you to check out my granddaughter. And he said, Nan? I said, yeah. I said, you need to start dating her. She'll make you a good woman. And he said, but she's not but 17. I said, that's why you need to move, and move now. Don't wait till she's 20. So I said, you're going to have to clear that with Al. So Stone goes to Al. I said, I've got you vetted. I said, but you need to check with her father because he makes the final call. I'm just saying,
and just so you know, I extended that to, she was almost 18. I said, well, let's wait till she's 18. And then she's officially kind of on her own. So that's kind of how it started. Little did we know then.
And he'd be the one that's building the duck call.
And really, in your words, he's building a better duck call than you did because
better than I ever did.
More uniform. It's a little easier now with computer, lays and stuff like that. When we were doing it, Dad, back in the 70s, it was all eyeball and drill bits.
So he's a great duck call maker. He's provided me with my grandchildren.
Yep. Free.
You think about it, you're like, man, it's old Stone is still there right now. If I wasn't here, I'd be down in that swamp down there. We're brushing our duck blinds. It's August, 6 weeks from teal season, so we're all getting ready for duck season. We don't let it get in the way of getting the gospel proclaimed to y'all. God became flesh. He became flesh. You're counting time by it. It's 2020 years ago. You might ought to investigate him. He died for your sins. He'll raise you from the dead. I'm thinking, love God and love your neighbor. That's it.
So even on a live sign like today, you're gonna get a little preaching if you tune in to the two of us. So that's what we're brightening your morning this morning. So our purpose here, we're doing what we call a live sign, where we're interacting with you guys. You guys have sent some questions that we're going to ask and try to give you some answers about some of that. Some of it has to do with ducks and everything else. If you haven't ordered a book yet, there's still time to be able to get a signed copy. So we want you to go to premiercollectibles.com, premiercollectibles.com/JesusPolitics. So Dad's new book, Jesus Politics is out today. It's brand new, and you get a chance to get a signed copy if you'll go to jesuscollectibles.com/JesusPolitics and pick that up. So, Dad, tell them a little bit about sort of the purpose of the book. We had a book called The Theft of America's Soul that came out last year.
It's a beautiful thing. I talked about in the last book, The Theft of America's Soul, and in this book, how to get that back, because you folks out there are seeing the same thing I'm seeing. By the way, if you curse us, my oldest son and myself, if you curse us for following Jesus, we won't hold it against you. We'll just forgive you and we'll move on. We'll forgive you and move on, forgive you and move on. It's a book about the spiritual kingdom, the king being Jesus. All of you, I mentioned a while ago, it's 2020 years from something. Well, you go back to 1,500, 110, 9, 8, 7. 2020 years ago, God became flesh. Well, you think out of all the people who ever lived on planet Earth, your calendar is, as far as time is concerned, is predicated on Him. All the years before Him, you call that all the years before Him, before Christ. Well, now it's all the years since He arrived. We're in the year 2020 since Jesus showed up. Therefore, each year is year of our Lord. Whether you love Him or hate Him, you're counting time by Him. What are the odds one human being, one person, God in flesh, would come to the earth, and He's the time marker? If you call Alexa, that I've never been on a computer, but I told Dan, I said, who's that woman that knows everything? And he said, Alexa. I said, call Alexa up and ask her, what year is it in Red China? So he says, Alexa, what year is it in Red China? You know what she said? 2020. I said, what year is it in Russia? Alexa, what year is it in Russia? She said, 2020. I'm like, well, it's the same year in America. We're all counting time by Jesus. Just a handful of us, a few, actually follow Him. We're trying to get you to follow Him. The book's about, you follow Jesus, you'll be known for love. You reckon we need any love in our culture? Look at the streets. Look at what they're doing, what they're saying, what they're spraying on the sides of buildings. You're like, give me a break. There's no love there because there's no Jesus there. Love, joy. People are mad and they don't know why. And it's vented on our streets. And we're looking. The other day I saw some little girls. I figured it about 25, none over 30, all young. They had a stick with a sign on it, and it said, we're going to hell and we're proud. I'm thinking, what kind of mind marches down the street of a city with that signage? So, love, joy, the book's about peace, peace of mind, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. So I came out of the woods up here today to say, why don't we try loving God? No rules and regulations. Just come to Jesus, love God, and love your neighbor. What is the downside to that?
So I'd say, I would think Jesus Politics is sort of a kingdom response to...
Sort of like a manifesto.
Right, exactly, kingdom manifesto. So Dad's going to be signing some
books. This is a good shot. I mean, look, these old years truly here, you say, now look, you're looking at that, you're saying, boy, that's a raggedy looking old dude. Some old look like some kind of redneck. You know what I am? A priest in the kingdom of God.
You look like a priest.
That's what some priests look like. You're like, good grief.
By the way, I thought it was interesting, that shirt that's on the cover of the book, is we donated that to the, Dad has been inducted into the Louisiana Sportsman's Hall of Fame.
Oh, that's right.
This year. Yeah, it's kind of been Corona push, but that shirt that's on the cover of the book, when you get it, we donated that to the museum. So Dad's going to be signing some books while we're talking here about this. As a reminder, premiumcollectibles.com/ bookplate.com/JesusPolitics. That's where you can go. There's still some signed copies available. You actually will get some of the books that we're signing here today, which is great. So Dave, you keep signing. And while you're doing that, we got some questions from different folks for the live sign today. And one of them I thought was interesting. You kind of just talked about it a little bit, but Chase from Michigan, he said, how many years have you been a Christian, and what's been the biggest difference since being a Christian versus not being a Christian?
I went from whoremongering, drunkenness, drugs. Got to remember, I'm a product of the 60s. That's why I still look a little rough around the edges. I came to a knowledge of Jesus and started investigating him when I was 28. At 28, I said, whoa, now wait a minute here. Everything I've ever done wrong, wiped clean, blotted out, never counted against me again. That's correct. That's why he came down. I'm like, whoo! So he'll deliver me from Satan, from sin, from guilt, from law, having to be perfect. This is grace. It's free. And he'll deliver me from the grave. Well, when I got to the deliver me from the grave part, Al, I said, we're talking immortality here.
Exactly.
So I said, what have I been thinking? I said, how in the world did I ever miss that? So the guy who shared that with me, I said, I thank you. Let me check this out to make sure, because this sounds too good to be true. And he said, check it out. It probably is too good for us. But it is true.
It is true.
You know the truth will set you free. Well, Satan, sin, guilt. You're like, good night. Peace of mind came my way that day. And the difference, and this boy will tell you, the difference, he's my oldest, so he was part of that watching when I was controlled by Satan. Once Jesus came in the picture, Al, you tell the story.
Well,
was there a big difference?
I was almost 10. Hannah's more books, Dan. I was almost 10 when you came to Christ, because it was somewhere in the early fall of 1975. It's kind of ironic because, as you know, you guys that follow us, we found out this past year that a daughter was born that Dad never knew about earlier that year.
That kind of came from the hoeing around?
The lifestyle, exactly. And so, in 75, that's what happened. And so it's really interesting now because Phyllis is her name, and she just moved here. In fact, one of you asked a question, Susie from Ohio, asked, how is Phyllis doing? And ironically, Susie, Phyllis just moved here yesterday. And so we moved her in. She's living right up the hill from Mom and Dad, where we were doing the podcast, the Unashamed podcast. So what was the podcast studio is now Tony and Phyllis's bedroom.
By the way, she said, hey, I'm ready to get in that duck blind with y'all.
That's right.
And I said, I know you're mine.
That's right.
The DNA said you were mine. I said, now, you're mine. You want a duck hunt.
So Dad just told me before we came on for this live side event, which, by the way, let me remind you again, for those of you, because I know people are coming and going, premiercollectibles.com/JesusPolitics is where you go to get a signed copy today. If you buy your copy brand new, hot off the presses, Jesus Politics today. So right before we came on air, Dad said, you got to talk to Martin. We got to get Little Miss Phyllis, he calls her, although she's 44, but she's still Little Miss Phyllis. We got to get her a shotgun. We got to get her some hunting gear.
Waiters.
Waiters, we got to, and we're not used to outfitting females in our duck blind. We don't. With this,
it's really a first, Al.
It's a first. So we got to kind of shift over some of our Under Armour and other wear in Realtree to be able to get her fitted, but we will. She's doing great. She's excited. She's a nurse. Her husband's an artist, Tony, and we're super excited to have him in our lives now and actually living here, which is a blessing for us. So thanks for that question. While Dad keeps signing away, there's a good question that comes from Ashley. Ashley is from Anchorage, Alaska, which, by the way, Ashley, I love your town. I've been there several times. Simon and Seaford is my favorite restaurant in the world, and it's in Anchorage, Alaska. They have halibut cheeks that are just, I would almost fly there just to eat that. That's how good
it was fine.
Oh, it was fine. It's so good. I love that. So thank you, Ashley, and I love Alaska. She says, and by the way, Ashley, your go-to verse is my verse. This is what I signed for my books. She said, when she's going through a difficult time, that her verse is Philippians 2, 3, and 4, which is that text where it said, we have to have the attitude of Christ. and we have to look out for each other as we go. And that's my go-to life verse too. But she said, is there a verse that's sort of your, core verse? I mean, what's a verse that you really kind of is a one you would go back to, I guess?
In lieu of God's mercy, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as living sacrifices,
Romans 12, 1 and 2.
holy, pleasing to God, which is your spiritual act of worship. Look, the term going to church, that term is not even in the Bible, going to church. We are the church. When you come to Jesus by faith and you obey the gospel, his death, burial, and resurrection in a pool of water, and you come forth, the old is gone, the new has come, you're filled with the Spirit, and you come forth, you say, what now? Now, today is what? Tuesday or Wednesday?
Tuesday.
Today's
August
Tuesday.
4th, the release of Jesus Politics.
It's Tuesday. You say the church is functioning and the kingdom of God is being made known on a Tuesday at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. You're like, what are y'all doing? We're worshiping God. That's the way you have to think. It's your lifestyle. Everywhere you are, supermarket, where you job, where you work, no profanity coming off your lips. You forgive people, you love them, you point them to Jesus. I mean, it's a great way to roll. I'll tell you what it'll give you. Peace of mind. Peace of mind. That's hard to come by these days. You agree,
I agree. So just a reminder, premiercollectibles.com/JesusPolitics is where you can go right now to secure a signed copy of the book. So you want to do that. Here was a good question that you get asked a lot, Dad, at events. Well, we hadn't done many events with COVID. This is David from Texas. He said, "Would you ever run for president?"
I think that
I've seen some Phil for president signs before.
I think that they're not ready for me yet. I will say
you would make Donald Trump look tame.
Well, I did meet with Donald J. Trump twice in person. Once he called me up one day. So
congratulating us on our book.
You say in all three of those meetings, not long, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 5, 10, 15 minutes when he came here to do a rally for the governor we wanted to go in there. You say, what was that the centerpiece of you and Donald Trump's discussion the entire time? Knowing me like y'all do, or what you've heard, you reckon we started talking about Jesus right off the bat, like, how you doing? Pretty good. Good to see you. I'm glad you're behind me, Phil. I said, oh, I'm for you. I said, but whatever happens, don't forget this. And I had it written down on a piece of paper. I put a arrow coming down out of heaven, a cross, a tomb, an arrow coming out of it, and an arrow coming down. I showed him this. Of course, he said, what is that? And I said, I'm glad you asked. And I told him about Jesus, about him dying for his sins. I said, Mr. President, to Big, I said, he was running for office at the time. I said, you do have sins, don't you? He said, oh yeah. Well, I knew right then he was an honest man. I said, well, guess what? We all have them. Therefore, Jesus came to remove them, shed blood to remove them. Then I talked to him about the resurrection. I said, look, there's a 6-foot hole, dude, waiting on you and me. I can't help it if you are a New York businessman running for president. You're going down in the ground at some point, right? He said, right. I said, Jesus was raised from the dead and guaranteed we can be raised from the dead. I said, pretty good story. What do you think? He was like, So I said, good to see you. Jesus is going back into heaven. All we're waiting on is that last era, the return. And I showed it to him. I said, so we wait patiently. I said, good to see you. I started to walk away, and he said, hey, Phil. I said, yeah. He said, can I have that piece of paper? I said, you sure can. Put it in your heart. Well, the other 2 visits, I said, they baptized you yet? He said, no, I need to do that, don't I? I said, you sure do. What I'm telling you is we have a president who heard the gospel, he listened, and I'm convinced he believed the gospel and he's put his faith in Jesus. That's what I believe. So I know this. What are the odds of some dude like me talking to the President of the United States? Give me a break. I'm down in the middle of nowhere.
And there's an open offer to baptize him. So, I think to Dad's point, Dave, to your question, because I was approached this past year, we had an election year here for governor, about running for governor. And I appreciated the people that were asking me and why, because, we're well known in the state. Wasn't a lot of well-known people on the Republican side running. But I told those folks kind of what Dad just told you, that we feel like our best role is to sort of go, upstream from politics. I mean, we need good men and women in politics, don't get us wrong. We need believers in there. We need people who are standing for what's right. We're seeing what's happening without it. So we want to encourage people to run. But from our perspective, we think we're better to influence those folks with the gospel, with the Bible, with, that's what Jesus politics is really all about. It's about moving upstream and looking at what Jesus would do in these settings and situations.
Yeah, like who you're going to vote for. I'm going to vote for the godliest one I can find.
Right, it's right. And we talk about that a lot in the book. So premiercollectibles.com/JesusPolitics. We'll keep throwing that out there for you that are joining us new. That's what we're doing. We're signing some books today that hopefully you will buy, get in your hands. It's brand new. Today is a great day. We're excited about it. Dad is more excited, I think, that we're not in New York than anything, because normally we would be in New York today, doing media hits, and we're going to do it, but we're going to do it from the computer. So it's I like it a little better in Louisiana, don't you?
You and me both.
I mean, nothing against New York. So I had several questions here, so I want to ask you about this, Dad, about duck hunting. A couple of them were asked about why you're so passionate about waterfowl, and then a couple others are just like, what would you tell us? Zach from Madison, Wisconsin was one. Some others asked about, why do you love duck hunting so much? And when did that start? When did the passion for that start for you?
It was deep in my soul, even as a young kid. I shot my first duck when I was 11, and in fact I got 2 ducks, 2 out of 3, 11-year-old, boom, boom. I shot a pintail hen and a little green-winged teal. There were 3 teal, and this pintail was with them.
Which is kind of unusual. You don't see them playing together very often.
So I took my clothes off. Now I'm naked. I'm 11-year-old standing on the bank of the bayou.
Well, I'm glad they didn't have cell phones back.
And I dog paddled out there like a dog, my retriever, and I was the retriever. I got my ducks. It was wintertime. I put my clothes back on. I ran back to the house a couple of miles away, and I told my dad, I walked in, I said, Dad, I've struck. I said, what do I have? And he said, you have a pintail hen and a green-winged teal. He said, go in there and pick them up, and we'll eat them. So you got that Acts chapter 10, Al, when Peter looked up and had a vision, and he saw this big movie screen dropping down out of heaven, and it contained all the beasts of the earth, and the things that creep along the ground, and the birds of the air.
Yep.
And a voice from heaven came to Peter and said, Peter, arise, kill, and eat. I'm like, yeah. So I've got God backing me up on this one.
That's orders from headquarters, right?
Well, they orders from headquarters.
That's exactly right. So I guess that passion then led to you having a specific skill you talked about earlier, about being able to hear ducks. And then you just infuse a good old American entrepreneur opportunity to say, you know what, we live in a place, and unfortunately, folks, let's face it, we're moving away from our core, because when we started in the 70s, it was like, you know what, I think I can make a living and build a company doing something I love to do.
Here's a good point to remember, Al, for all of y'all. Make it your ambition. This is the Apostle Paul talking to the Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians 4:11, I think. You say, make it your ambition to live a quiet life. I do. Mind your own business. I do. Work with your hands, doing something that's good, so that your daily life will win the respect of outsiders. And here's the key, so that you won't have to be dependent on anyone. He means any human, right. any faction, any group. I'm only dependent on the God of creation. Quiet life, mind my own business, work hard. You're like, did it work? Oh, did it work? You tell me. You're like, you were blessed mightily through the thin times. Started out just fishing the river, catching fish and selling the fish. 70 cents a pound on the catfish, 30 cents a pound on the buffalo and goo. And so you'd catch your fish and gar. You bring them up the hill. Miss Kay would take them in. I got the duck call going. First year, $8,000 in sales. And I'm like, Miss Kay, we are rolling.
Because you're only making $6,000 a year teaching, right? So it was an
Yeah.
upgrade, you know.
And she said, we're going to starve to death. I said, no, we're not. I said, everything's going to be all right, honey. Calm down.
And it's grown to what it is today. Wound up being on national television, which we didn't plan on.
There you go.
But that's America. America was the incubator of freedom, and if you turn Americans loose, they can do great things. I mean, you just get out of the way. So, I mean, we're all about limited government, limited regulation. Let people grow. Let them do what they do. That's how we grew what we do.
Our country, Al, has, a lot of us have this in our mind, that government edicts and rules and regulations and taking the taxpayers' money, that man-made governments can actually provide for you. Not right, not true.
It's not biblical.
Only God.
And it's not there. And that's what this whole Marxism thing that's happening now is crazy. And we know it won't work.
We've exchanged Jesus and replaced him with Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin.
That's right.
Old Lenin said, religion is the opium of the people. You're like, do what? He was an adherent to the socialist movement that that idiot came up with, and now you look at it and you say, boy, I cannot believe we're wanting to go back down that path.
Well, and
Karl Marx started.
It becomes its own religion, which is what you're seeing. That's why, look, and now we're graduating to burning Bibles and the whole deal. So that's one of the major themes of Jesus Politics, which is out today for those of you just joining us. PremierCollectibles.com/JesusPolitics is where you go to get a signed copy. Dad is signing some here today. We're answering a few of your questions that you sent in. Let's see. I guess Eric from St. Paul, Minnesota, which, you're right there in the middle of it, Eric.
I just baptized the boy day before yesterday. He came to meet with us all the way down here. He had watched the podcast, and he wanted me to baptize him, I said, well, all this social distancing, dude. I said, I tell you what, God, the one who raised his dead men from the ground, let's not worry about the 6 foot. So I take him and he confessed Jesus as Lord, and I baptized him.
Was he from Minnesota?
He was from Minnesota.
Yeah. Well, Eric from St. Paul said, and we just talked about it, how can we help get America get back to where she was before? So we kind of identified some of the problems. What would you say? I mean, what is our pathway to not only regain, but then to grow again and be united again?
Put Jesus and quit bad-mouthing him and putting out filth in Hollywood. Put Jesus back in the school system. Put Jesus back in the news media, for crying out loud. They're just lies coming out of them. And put Jesus back in your government. You got to remember, man-made governments are run by fallible human beings, sinful men. Some are saved, some are not, and you mix them all together, and it's rah, 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 rah. There's just two forces at work on this planet, good and evil. You ought to be able to see both. If you see rioting, looting, shooting, burning people's property, you say, that would be on the evil side, satanic to the very core of its being. Over here, you say, you see the good. That's us. We're like, give us a break. Solid food is for the mature who by constant use have taken these scriptures and we ingest them, and we are able to do that. We train ourselves to distinguish between good and evil. That's what all this is about. Just know the difference between good and evil. Embrace good. Shun evil as you go forth. Don't tell me it can't be done. I did it. I came out of a rough background. I didn't know Jesus. I was a heathen. I met him and I'm like, man, did that ever change my life? Now we just walk as Jesus did, and that's what the book's about. Your lifestyle of serving the Almighty. that brought you forth from your mother's womb. You were born again through your faith in him. And here we go. So it's catching on because we're baptizing more and more of them. They just keep coming. They just keep coming. So based on what y'all heard today, get in touch with us. I don't have a cell phone, so you can't give me a bus. And if you're cursing me, trust me, I'm not hearing you. I don't have a cell phone. But I'm glad you do.
So
I'm giving this to you.
A message that Dad just talked about for America, of hope and something better and love. And just think about how far would just some good old forgiveness go in our national dialogue right now with everything that's going on, you know, talking about race, talking about everything. Just forgiveness, you know, being able to forgive each other and say, forgive the past. Like, if we let's reset, let's start going forward. Man, I mean, because that really is the theme of the whole Bible.
What did Peter say, Al? Old Peter, he came to Jesus. He said, Lord, how many times should we forgive someone? 7? You know, in America, they don't even give you one mistake.
That's
I mean, they will hound you.
Cancel culture.
Cancel.
Right.
You made a mistake. Tear his statue down. I mean, no forgiveness. How many times should we forgive them, Lord? 7? Jesus said 70 times 7. Because if you start adding up your sins, I told you about some of mine. You say, you start adding yours up, how many would it be? You say, you'd get to 7 pretty quick.
Right.
You say, the Lord forgave us. There's no telling how many. If you add up all your sins in your lifetime, you're like, whoa.
You remember that story in John 8 where the woman was there and she'd been caught in a very act of adultery, and they were ready to stone her as the law commanded, you know. So they were trying to trap Jesus and see would he stick up for this woman? Would he stick up for the law? And Jesus he knelt down and he started writing in the sand, and people always wondered what he was writing. And some people said one of the guesses may be that he was writing down the sins of all these people that are standing around the circle, because he's God. So, you know, there's a lot of writing to be done, and that may be true. But what happened was, he said, I tell you what, whoever has no sin, you cast the first. You be first.
Yeah. Step up
and start wailing on this woman. And then it said the older ones first, then the youngers, they all started dropping the rocks. Boom. Oh, can you imagine that? All those rocks are hitting the ground, and they all just walked away. And he looks up. He's still writing, you know, still writing something. He looks up, and the woman is there.
He says, "Where are your
accusers?
Yeah.
Am I the only one left?" She said, "Yes, Lord." And he said, "Well, neither do I. I'm not going to. If they're not condemning you, then neither am I. Go and leave your life of sin." And so it's a great just microcosm of what Dad's talking about and what forgiveness means and what it can do. As a reminder, we're doing live sign today. Dad is literally signing books that if you buy from premiercollectibles.com/JesusPolitics that you can get a copy of. This is the release day of Jesus Politics. Dad literally has been doing media hits right here from Duck Commander all morning, and we took out this middle part of the day for you guys to be able to interact and have some live chat going on with you guys, and we appreciate you doing that. You'll be doing it the rest of the day as well, Dad. So tell others about the book and be sure to get it. This was an interesting question. It's kind of stuck in the middle of everything, so I thought this was pretty good. This is from Eleanor in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, and she said, "Phil, what is your favorite vegetable?"
Take a cauliflower and get you about a cup and a half, mix it together, mayo and mustard. You smooth that out on it. You steam it first before you put that on it. You steam it for put an inch of water in a heavy pot, inch of water, put the cauliflower in there, put a lid on it, let it steam for 20 minutes, set it out in a black skillet, put your mustard and your mayo all around it, dribble a little melted butter, about that much stick of butter, and you melt it on top of it, add a little salt, black pepper, put it in the oven, and when you see the mayo and the mustard get a little brown on top, you take that out, and it'll be tender because it's been steamed for 20 minutes.
Right.
But that is a fine eating thing. Cauliflower, woman.
I should have known Dad would have something. I've never participated in that.
It is good.
I'm going to have to get that next time I come down to eat. Here was another question, Dad, from Denver, from West Virginia, Charleston, West Virginia. He said, "What was it like playing with and competing against Terry Bradshaw at Louisiana Tech when you were there?"
Well, he was a teammate of mine, and he was second string, and I was first string. So I played 4 years, On my 5th year, I looked at the woods when I would drive by, and I said, you know what? I think I would rather be in the woods than play football. So I went to him. I said, I'm first string, you're second string. You'd have to beat me out, which is doubtful. I could throw a football. Ask him. So
he said you were like Joe Namath was.
Hey, but anyway,
your release.
I said, listen, I'm gonna hand it over to you, my man. I'm stepping out, and you're stepping up. I'm going to the woods to chase the ducks.
Because he still had 2 years of eligibility because he was a
Yep.
year behind you, so he was going to be able to play for
Yeah,
2
2 years.
and you would have had 1 year, right?
Yep. So I left with 1 year left, but I left anyway. So as it turned out, he's done well. I ran up on him at the airport in L.A. over there,
Yep.
and he grabbed me from behind. I looked around. I said, Bradshaw, dude. I said, you did pretty well. He said, you did too. I said, I chased ducks, and you're running around with large, violent men chasing you. I said, the problem's not so much with the chasing, it's when they catch you is when the trouble comes.
How many injuries did he tell you
He
about?
went through an injury list there for about 15 minutes about what they broke while he played ball. I said, hey, but you made it, dude, so go ahead on. By the way, he is a great guy.
He's a great guy. We had
Great guy.
about 5 years ago, back when the show was still in the big heyday for Duck Dynasty, Louisiana Tech arranged, Fox Sports 1 was in town covering the game because they were playing Tulane, which had Joe Montana's son as their quarterback. So you had Montana, you had Bradshaw, you had Dad, all these quarterbacks in the house. So they honored both of you that night, which was a really cool thing for us. And then I enjoyed just watching Dad and Bradshaw just tell stories. And it's the first time, other than that airport, they had really had a chance to talk. And so they just kind of got over in a corner. And of course, you got all these dignitaries and everybody around, but they were just kind of, it hit me then. I thought they were just two country boys from North Louisiana that both hit it big for totally different reasons. But it was still in them. You can hear that.
One went for the ducks, and then one went for the bucks.
That's right. And the Super Bowl rings. That's exactly
it worked
right.
out.
It worked out pretty well. So that's a good question. We like talking about that because it's obviously part of our story as we go forward. So we're here.
He actually was better than I was.
Yeah. Well, it turned out he won 4 Super Bowls. He was pretty
He
good.
had the desire where I had my mind on the ducks.
You had the physical set, but mentally you weren't. You didn't
right.
love it.
That's right.
And that was the deal. And look, those guys, they have to love it. So I tell you what, one of the highlights that for me to look at Dad's athletic career, because I was a little baby living in Tech, but the assistant athletic director at Alabama was a fan of the show, and so he sent us a copy of when Tech played Alabama in 1966, which was a national championship year for Alabama.
Kenny the Snake Stabler.
Snake Stabler was the quarterback, and Dad was the quarterback for Tech. And Dad and I watched the game together. And of course, Alabama, they had colorized the game and everything. I mean, it was really, because they're Alabama. And
yes, they were undefeated.
Yeah. And so we're watching the game. And of course, it was the first time I had seen Dad play. So I understood why he was so good because I couldn't believe how quick your release was. It reminded me more of Marino. Bradshaw said name it, but it was really quick out. And of course, some of the guys, the Tech had back in those days weren't so great at catching it. So you had 4 picks that game. 2 of them were bouncing off of somebody that just didn't catch the ball. The only one a linebacker got in coverage.
Yeah.
But Dad threw for 230 something yards that game against number 1 defense in the nation that year that won a national championship. And even Bear Bryant, because Mom saved some of the clippings, praised you. As he didn't give you a name. He only did the number. He said, well, I thought number 10. That's what he got. He said, I thought number 10 was pretty impressive tonight. And then he went in on how they were going to have to work on their defense, right? Because Dad, was throwing all those passes and getting them. So I thought it was really interesting. But that's interesting to talk about that era. So premiercollectibles.com, Jesus Politics is where you can go. We've been signing some books here today. For you, it's our release, and we have time for maybe a couple of more questions. One of them was asked. I was interesting that I thought you or I could is that this is from Corey in California. Corey basically said, "What do you think? How do you think our household would have been different had your daughter, who you've now discovered, had grown up with all those rowdy boys?" And that's obviously just subjective because we don't know. But me getting to know Phyllis, she's like us. She's a lot like Dad. She's just as happy being away from people as with people in terms of social interaction. But she has our mindset, which is really incredible. And there's no doubt God had His hand on her because she had some tough things that she grew up with. to protect her, so that and she always sought Christ, which is really interesting.
Think about it. 45 years, immorality produces this girl. She didn't know who her father was for 44, 45 years,
Right.
and I didn't know I had a daughter.
Right.
I didn't even know she existed. And all of a sudden, she just starts putting it all together, saying, her mother never told her. I wouldn't even recognize any of them now. I mean, 45 years, I'm like, well, she just comes out, checks her DNA, and my kinfolk show up on the DNA, and she's like, I don't think the dad I thought was my dad, I don't think he's my real dad.
She didn't recognize any of the names.
So you have a lost child for 45 years in both parties. Neither one of us knew the other one existed.
Right.
So it was quite the
right
the homecoming when she showed up. I can
right
tell you
at
that.
right at first, like everybody, we're cautious. She's cautious. Nobody knows anybody, and I know a lot of people. A lot of you have reached out to us because of what's happened.
Thank the Lord for DNA.
That's exactly right, or we'd never know, and that you were still alive and healthy enough to have a relationship with it. To answer your question, Corey, I think she would have held her own fine. Jeff was younger, and I always say he was the baby sister I never had till I knew I had one.
She's a nurse. She's in the medical field.
Yep, she's really
Great job.
really smart, really strong person of faith. She would have held her own quite well. It's interesting because I view her so much as one of us now when we text and talk on the phone. Recently, her youngest son got married, and so I went to the wedding. And she was doing a back and forth on a group text about what to wear with mainly Lisa, and I was mercilessly left in the group text chain. And I told her, I said, this is the first time I've seen you as a woman in this text. You're worried about your dress. Does this make me look fat? Up until this point, she was just like one of the boys. Like all of our conversations were like that. So she's not real frilly and girly. That's just not her style. But she was for the wedding, which I thought was really interesting. So Jesus Politics, it's a follow-up to Theft of America's Soul. Obviously, we want people to get it and to read it. It really is about a kingdom life response to everything that we say.
Everyone that's listening to us, you got to remember the biggest weapon that we have in a fallible, man-made republic. The biggest weapon you have is your vote.
Right.
It's just simple. Vote godly as best you can. Research them enough to know, I don't care what they're running for, the Senate, the House, whatever. You vote godly. It's pretty easy to see who's godly and who's ungodly. Just listen to them, what comes out of their mouth, and you say, Mr. Trump has, at times, he's a little caustic, but his acumen is out the roof, and he did listen intently when we were talking about Jesus. So, keep that in mind. Go to the voting booth, whatever. I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because he listened to the gospel of Jesus and said, let me have that. I want to look at this. So,
and he's done a lot for believers.
That right there, he got my vote.
Done a lot for religious liberty, which is important to us.
He's done more for Christianity than any president, in my opinion.
Exactly, and Dad is right. You need to, if you haven't registered to vote, you need to be sure and do that. It's very important. Every election is important, but it's always important now. So we're about to have to go do some more media, but we wanted to spend some time with you today. The last reminder, Premier Collectibles, premiercollectibles.com/JesusPolitics is where you can go. Buy one of the hotly released Jesus Politics book. Get you a signed copy, which Dad's been doing a lot of signing.
Bow to the King, bow to the King, and the King only. You bow to one, Jesus.
That's exactly right, and which is exactly what the founder said. We bow the knee to King Jesus only. And so even the founders got the importance of that. George Washington was a great man. When they wanted to make him king, he said, nope. We only have one, and that's the way that it should be. So thank you for spending some time with us here on Live Sign. We look forward to next time we can interact with you. Thank you for following Unashamed, our podcast that you can get on Blaze TV. So check that out, In the Woods with Phil. as well. But get your copy. Tell someone about Jesus Politics, and we hope you enjoy it. Let us know what you think about the book as well. Later.